wonderful singing out there again tonight. So very glad to have you join with us and looking forward to a great missions conference continuing out together. We're singing hymn number 451, Rock of Ages. Is that correct, sir? I think that's the one we have listed here. Hymn number 451, Rock of Ages, the song I got listed here on the screen tonight. And then the Old Rugged Cross, and then Blessed Be the Tie That Binds? Is that the one we have there? There it is. Old Rugged Cross, Blessed Be the Tie That Binds. That works for me. Let's all stand together as Jason Barkley leads us. Which song are we doing first, sir? Old Rugged Cross or Rock of Ages?
Let's do Rock of Ages.
Rock of Ages. There you go, sir. Here we go.
Rock of Ages, clap for me. Let me hide myself in thee. Let the water and the blood from thy riven side which flowed be of sin the double cure. Save from wrath and make me pure. Rock, draw this fleeting breath when mine eyes shall close in death. See thee on thy judgment throne, Rock of Ages, cleft for me. Let me hide myself in thee. Amen. Well, take your seats if you would. We'll sing out another hymn together, the Old Rugged Cross. On a hill far away stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. And I love the old cross where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. The old rugged cross, till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. To the old rugged cross I will ever be true, in shame and reproach gladly bear. Then he'll call me someday to my home far away, where his glory forever I'll share. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross, till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. Amen. Good singing.
Thank you, sir. We're very glad that you also Very glad that you've joined with us tonight. Looking forward to a great service tonight and everything that's coming up. Reminder, next Sunday night, we will be having a 5 p.m. service. So that's not Wednesday. That's not 2 weeks from now. That is next Sunday night. We will be having a 5 p.m. And if the weather holds nice, it'll be an outdoor service. So as Pastor said, dress warmly. I work here at the church most days of the week. Every day after lunch, as a tradition, I go take a walk, usually about 5 to 7 minutes, and I walk around the parking lot. Yesterday, when it was 75 and everywhere else in the city, all of you were wearing shorts and t-shirts, I was wearing a pair of long, thick pants and a nice, thick vest coat, and I was cold. And I'm fat. So it is chillier here at the church. So I'm reminding you that for next week, because every time we have one of these, someone comes, they dress lightly because it's warm at their house, and then they come here and they go, wow, it's cold. So we're going to try to stop that from happening this year. So there's our reminder. Next Sunday night, 5 p.m. That is a test run like we talked about for us to see, as we've had many people talk about the 5 o'clock time change. I know Sharon Magyar, as she was leaving today, said, Pastor Joe, pray for me. I'm going to try to make it to church tonight. She said, but the church I'm going to, they are ahead of you. I said, what do you mean they're ahead of me? They said, they've already changed their service to 5 o'clock. Why couldn't you do that before I left? And I said, Sharon, I consider it seriously. They already got it at 5 o'clock. So I'm going to try to make it there with the moving truck and make it to church. She said, but I love that idea. Why couldn't you have done it 3 years ago? I said, well, we're still not saying we're doing it yet. We're giving it a test run next Sunday. Then we're going to try it again in 2 weeks during our Outreach Sunday night. How many know that during Outreach Sunday night last month, it was dark by the end of it? And it's a month later, so it'll be darker even soon. So we're going to try that again then. We're going to get a couple tries so everyone can get a feel for it. Someone on Wednesday turned to me and said, Pastor Joe, I love this idea in the winter, but maybe in the summer we should move it back to 6. And I'm perfectly fine with that idea. I'm good with any idea. I just want your ideas, because we all would like to be on board and work out. We can't make everyone happy, but we can try to make everyone accommodated. So thank you again. Appreciate all of you for coming here tonight. I do have 2 quick announcements for you. Number 1, our church this morning handed in those giving sheets, commitment cards to Faith Promise Missions. Right around $1,700 a month was already committed on the first Sunday morning. That is a great number for us to start off with. Our average is usually right around $2,000 by all the time all the forms come in. We know several forms are coming in next week. So thank you for all of you who've already committed. If you have not handed in your missions conference commitment form to give to missions, please hand those in the next 10 days or so. This helps us know what we can commit to giving towards for the next year. How many of you do a budget? How many of you know that you have to know what money comes in so you can know what money to spend? That's how it works. How many wish the federal government did that? Yeah. I was watching something this week and they said the federal government was praising themselves that they only went over by $1.6 trillion so far this year. Yeah. I just sat there and thought, man, I wish I had that type of, just wow, just the audacity, amazing. So we're not like that. We want to know what's coming in, and we want to know where your heart is and where you want your dollars spent. Speaking of dollars being spent, this last 10 days, the Lord has been very good to our church, in that we had several givers donate money towards our church's food pantry and transportation fund. In fact, just around $12,000 came into that fund in the last 10 days. From different givers all over, till finally one giver called up and said, how much do you need to get a van? Get the van. I said, well, what we're being told right now, it's right around X number, so we'd need about X amount of dollars. I'll write the check if you can come pick it up. Done. And so we, as of this weekend, we contacted a dealer in the Detroit area in Farmington Hills. They had a van. They're getting it certified right now, so we're getting it certified, inspected, and checked. It would come with a 12-month powertrain warranty. If everything works out, we should know more on Monday. And so if everything passes on the van, we could be putting an offer in on that van on Monday or Tuesday. Or as you know how dealers work, the van may disappear between now and Monday. But we're waiting on all that. Please pray for us that God will give us wisdom, that everything will go through. Someone said, well, what if it doesn't pass certification? Then we don't buy it. It's pretty simple, but we're going to look forward to it. We're grateful for all that God's doing. Someone said, so with all that money, thank the Lord there's no more expenses. How many own vehicles? How many know there's always more? Someone said, so if I gave extra money to it, would it help? Yes, it always would help. We have insurance and everything else that comes with it. So if you would like to help get those last mile of the way, we'd be grateful for it. You can just drop that in under Food Pantry and Transportation Fund. Well, thank you again for joining with us today. Let's go ahead and let's have a word of prayer, and then we'll have our offering time. As soon as we have that offering time, if you are in Pastor's discipleship class, you will be dismissed back to the back with Pastor. And if they are, I believe, 3 weeks away from being done in that class. Very proud of that group of young people who've been going through that together, and excited to see them all work. This morning in junior church, Caleb Barkley was teaching junior church, and I was talking with Susan. And I said, hey, listen, isn't it so great? I said, this is Emma's future. And I love our workers in our church said it's also Glorianne's. Because it is. It is the future of the church, and we're excited to see all of these young people having an opportunity to learn the Word of God and then be able to teach others also. How many, Carolyn Sawyer sent the church a message saying how much she enjoyed us having Caleb and Stephen and some of the other young people song. She said, what a great pleasure it is to see those young people taking the next steps of faith. So thank you for all of your encouragement. Let's continue to see that. And on that mark, let's go ahead and let's have Caleb Barkley, if you don't mind, sir, lead us in a word of prayer for the offering today, sir.
Dear God, thank you for please help all the people who are sick right now, and please help us to get the offering for the transportation van so we can get insurance on it and for it to pass the certification. And please help us have a good offering so we can give the missionaries a bit more than what we did last year.
Discipleship class is dismissed. Well, let's do something a little different today. Let's go ahead and let's hand these papers out real quick. Let's have, Aurora's already raising her hand up. She's ready for it. Aurora and Faith, come on up here. Help me hand these papers out to everybody. And so grateful for our young ushers who've been helping. Eddie, could you close that back door to the hallway for me, sir, while we go there? Here we go, everyone. Here's yours. Here's yours. Let's not have collisions here. You take that side of the room. Aurora, you take that side of the room. And then let Faith take this side of the room. Emma, do you want to help do it? Come on up. If you want to help do it, come up. Grab some flyers from Aurora. And you can go ahead. Aurora, can you share some with Emma? And then we'll get that headed today. Lesson 20. Amazing, huh? I think we started this at the beginning of last year, being able to finish. It took a little break in the summer there. Thank you for all those who prayed for me and my health during the summer. We're very grateful to be able to move forward today. Lesson 20, chapter 20, the diet of the saintly or sturdy soul. Saintly or sturdy soul. So grateful for this lesson series. So grateful for you being able to come so faithfully to it. Go ahead, sir. It's getting a pop from my office, probably. Just kidding. Glad to get started in this lesson today. Lesson 20, the diet of a saintly or sturdy soul. You know, I have always enjoyed different lessons in history and different lessons that come through. And I have enjoyed teaching this series, as I told you about 2 weeks ago. I'm excited to be done with the series, though. When I get to an end of a series, I'm ready for the finale. How many have ever been that way when a TV show or a movie, like it's been great, it's good to be done. Let's tie the whole thing up right, and let's get moving forward there. Get done with the book. The other day I was reading an Agatha Christie book, and I was getting close to the end. And I told my wife, I said 4 times I figured out who the murderer was, and 4 times I was wrong. I'm sitting there like, how? I thought myself pretty smart. No, I'm not. Apparently, I don't know what I'm talking about in this stuff. And it's amazing. Sometimes you get these things. I'm so grateful for how well you've come and how well you've paid attention and listened. This has been a series that I teach throughout the years. I've taught throughout the years, trying to get people to strengthen their soul. This last week, I was counseling someone, and they looked at me and said, I can't fix this. I just can't fix it. I said, no. You're right, you can't fix it. Not in your own strength. But God can. And if you follow God's plan written out in God's holy word, you can fix it. And you can get to this soul level here. And so far I've given kind of the variety of souls that people have, right? We've had the sensitive soul. We've had the studying soul. But this is the soul that I believe that every Christian should strive to reach at some point in their life. How many ever just knew the godly saint at church? You know what I'm talking about? That man who walked into church, and he was just this elderly man who walked in, and he just had a smile on his face, and he loved Jesus. And as you saw him, you're like, man, man, he's going to have a good word for me today. Or that little old lady who'd walk in and she'd smile. And you'd be sitting there going, it could be struggling, it could be hard, but it doesn't matter. She's just going to love Jesus all the way through. I remember when I was a kid, I left Community Baptist of Saginaw when I was 3 years old. But I remember the man who gave candy every single Sunday to kids who came faithfully to the toddler class. He brought little candy hearts, I think it was, something like that. Yes, sir? Still there, I know. You know, and he seemed old to me when I was 3. And then the thing is you see those guys, and every time I saw him, and then I would come back and I'd visit, and he'd still the same smile, the same joy, the same thing. And you have those people who are like, yes. And that is the goal of every Christian. To not only be sensitive, to not only be a studious soul, but to one day be a sturdy soul. And then to take that sturdiness and one day become, in our language, saintly. Now, we understand the biblical term of being a saint. The biblical term is talking about going to heaven, being in heaven with Jesus. But we're talking about the words that we would describe people today. You ever hear someone say they're a patron saint of the family? That's the terminology we're talking about. Where someone says or goes, that person loves God and they're good at what they do for God. Well, how do we get there? It's just the geese. Don't worry about it. There's lots of geese out there. Someone scared them, and the geese are going to flock. For all those watching online, the geese are flying over the building right now, making a terrible noise. The saintly soul. Well, you understand, the sturdy soul will stand tall while the storms rage around them. That's what makes a sturdy soul. A sturdy soul is sturdy. That means they stand. They're firm. They're unmovable. And in a world full of constant change, people want something sturdy to lean on. They want someone they can call and they just know, hey, they're just going to keep going. They're just faithful. And you can be that person. In fact, dare I say it, you must be that person. You must. It's amazing, in our Christian world today, people will live 20, 30 years and become unfaithful in their sturdiness. As they get closer to death, instead of becoming more faithful to God, they become more bitter, more mean, more less kind, more self-centered. It's a new wave that has happened in the Christian world. And we must turn the tide. We must have a generation of people who are sturdy. And by the way, I use the term saintly or sturdy soul because I look at saintly doesn't come as a youth. Most young people are not saints. You don't just see that. But they can become that. But you can be sturdy all the way through your life. I've known young people who are just a sturdy pillar of truth. And as we study this lesson out today, I want to remind you of a sturdy man. There was a story when I was a kid I loved to read. And one of the stories I read was The Lays of Rome. My parents got me the book many years ago. And I loved the story of reading the different things of how Rome became Rome. The sacrifices that men made. The statements that they made of weak men make hard times. Hard times make strong men. Strong men make good times. And Rome understood this. Country before self. Service before self. And when Rome was in its infancy, there was a man by the name of Horatius. And Horatius was known as the captain of the gate. And I love his story because it's just phenomenal. This is an artist's rendition of what happened. See, in the 6th century BC, that's before the time of Christ, Horatius was guarding Rome, and the army that was supposed to protect Rome from the barbarian horde, it failed. Horatius had wanted the job of being the general of the army, but he was denied it because another man had more wealth, had more prestige, and they gave it away to him. And Horatius made the decision, it didn't matter what happened, my job is to guard the city of Rome. And when the other man led the army off and lost, the barbarian horde came to conquer Rome. Outnumbered far and away, Horatius was now the de facto general and protector of Rome. His title was called Captain of the Gate. But basically, he is the only man leading the small army to defend the people of Rome and what we know would become the Roman Empire from being completely and totally defeated. And at this moment, Horatio turns to the men and looks around him and says, listen, we must defend. He takes his small army, leads them to the river passing, to the bridge, and says, we must hold this bridge. But being misinformed as to how many men were coming, he quickly realized, we can't win. There's no victory here. But it was the springtime. And the river had flooded. There was no way to cross the river. And there was another army of Rome, but it was far, far away, and the messenger had been sent to bring the other army and bring the army up to Rome to defend Rome. So Horatius, as the man pictured in the very center of the photo, turned to his two friends and said, we will hold the bridge. And as we hold the bridge, he commanded his men behind him to destroy the bridge behind him, leaving him to certain death against the enemy. For almost a half a day, Horatius and his two friends held the bridge while the soldiers behind them painstakingly broke down the solid stone bridge that had been built. Horatius was wounded with a spear in the back. His friends, bloodied and beaten, held the bridge over and again till Horatius realized there was just enough time. There was one small section of the bridge left. He turned to his friends and told them to retreat across the bridge. I will stand alone. When someone asked why, it is quoted that this is what he said. Then outspake brave Horatius, captain of the gate, to every man upon this earth death comes soon or late. And how can a man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his father in the temple of his God? Horatius fought, held the line while they broke the last part of the bridge down, leaving their captain to die. The last second, Horatius was knocked over and jumped into the river wearing full Roman legionnaire armor. I love this guy. His nickname was Cyclops because he had lost an eye in the battle. In full legionnaire armor, he swam across the river, got back to the city of Rome, and defended the city of Rome till the other army came and defended them. The world needs brave and sturdy men. How can a man die better than facing fearful odds? Hey, we live in a world today where people say we're outnumbered. We live in a world today where they say, hey, the Christianity, it's time past. Hey, you stand alone on the bridge to the future. And I tell you, you might. But Rome surely looked like it wouldn't survive this day. But it did. And it didn't because of outnumbering odds. It did because of 3 men who stood on a bridge just long enough for reinforcements to arrive. It did because the whole army, by the way, don't you think the whole army is watching this going, I'll die for that guy. I'll fight for that army. Man, he believes in something. Hey, does the world know where you stand and believe? Can they lean upon your strength? Can they see you bloody, battered, and torn and still standing as the storm rages about you? And that's the challenge of Lesson 20. Will you be a sturdy soul that will make you one day a saintly soul? The key verses of our lesson today are Psalm 103. It's been our key verses. 1 Corinthians 11:1, Genesis 50, and 2 Timothy chapter 4. The thesis of our lesson is the saintly soul becomes such after years of being sturdy. The progression happens as the soul will move from being reliable, faithful soul to a sage-like saint. It's the progression of a Christian. It's the progression of every Christian. This needs to be our rallying cry. That's someone I can lean on. That's someone who has so much of Jesus in them. That song of I saw Jesus in you comes from them seeing you. Your sturdiness doesn't come from your own strength. It comes from you leaning on Christ. And as you lean on Christ, others can lean on you. How many have ever had that moment? You don't have the strength to stand, but there's someone there you can lean on. And their strength gives you something to stand with. The question of the chapter, what choices will be required to become a saintly, sturdy soul? And what daily sacrifices that others will not consider profitable or even helpful must be taken to achieve this goal? Understand, to become this goal, there's got to be sacrifice. There's got to be choices that are made. Horatius did not one day just wake up and go, yeah, you know what I could do? I could stand at a bridge and defend off an enemy horde all by myself. No, there was years of daily sacrifice, years of sword training. Don't you think that when Paul wrote about the armor of God, that he may not have been thinking about some of these great historical battles that had happened? Of men who had stood in the gap to hold the line. I sought for a man among them who would stand in the gap, and I found none. Hey, we live in a world today where there's plenty of gaps in the Christian line. And it needs some sturdy souls to stand in the gap and say, I'll make the sacrifice. The sacrifice is worth it. Which leads us to our quote of the chapter. I love this quote by J. Oswald Sanders. All saints experience more than their share of trials and temptations and grew as a result. Have you ever sat there and thought, man, would it please stop? Have you ever had that conversation? Ever had that conversation with God? God, you know, I understand that like trials are allowed to come, but I'm done, right? I really am done. This last week, some of you know I had to go get an MRI. The reason I had to go get an MRI is I went in for my hearing test and the doctor didn't like what they saw, which is the same thing they saw 18 years ago. I had this dramatic hearing loss in my left ear that always scares the living daylights out of them. They don't know what to say it. There's 3 reasons you get it. This is what they tell me. They told me this 18 years ago. They told me this a month ago. 3 reasons you get it. Number 1, brain cancer, which is what my mom had. Which, now that I write down in my sheet my mom had brain cancer, now they're really scared. Number 2, cochlear ear failing, which is the nerve endings in the ear. They say it could be failing, and that scares them too. And number 3, you're just weird. Listen, I tried to tell him. Zach, I looked right at him. I'm like, listen, like I know which one of the 3 it is. I'm good. Listen, we really feel we need to get an MRI for you. It would be very important just to realize that you already did it 18 years ago. I said, yeah, but in 18 years, things can change. We want to check. So Thursday night, I'm sitting in the hospital, getting ready to get an MRI as they're explaining this all over to me again. Let me explain to you. When you're sitting in the hospital that your mom was diagnosed with brain cancer for, to get the test to see if you have brain cancer, all of a sudden you get somber. And I'm sitting there trying to read a book, and I'm just sitting there, I'm like, Lord, no offense, Lord. I'm good today. And I know I have to teach this lesson on Sunday, but I'm a little tired. And I really don't want to be here. I would much rather be hunting with either one of my sons right now. We're out hunting with my wife and with my dad, or playing with my daughter, anything but this test. And I already know what the answer is going to be, most likely. How many have ever had that feeling in the back? I already know what it's going to be, most likely, but still. Are you sure, Lord? And the Lord has a reason for all. By the way, somebody asked, what did the result back? The doctor still haven't called me. They did send me a note, and it was all doctor jargon. And it basically looks like the same thing it said 18 years ago, but we'll find out on Monday. I think I'm good. It said no weirdness or something. There's a word that doctors use in the paper they sent to me. You can ask Zach later. He'll tell you the words. Actually, probably ask his wife. She knows it more than nurses. They know more than the doctors. And I know. It's true. Am I right here? That's how it works. Yeah, no. Zach's my friend, and so is his wife, so it works. Point being is sometimes you have trials and temptations, and you're just like, why? Why, Lord? And it's true. All saints experience more than their share of trials. It's what makes them saints. They handle it. Not because they're better, but because they have a better God. Well, we all have the same God. No. You see, it's their view of God. They look at God and go, He's always good. He's always right. He's always just. Even when it doesn't seem just, it doesn't seem right. And they may not think it right at the very first moment, but they always come to that conclusion. Will you be sturdy? As I was getting ready to pull in the hospital, someone called me up, and they were calling me up, and they were explaining a very minor malady that was bothering them. And to them, it was life-altering. I'm in the car, on the phone, and in my brain, I'm literally thinking, I'm going in to go check and see if I have brain cancer, I'm going to die. And you're this, and how many of you have ever had that thought, right? Like, let's compare trials right now, right? But understand, that's not what they needed to hear, and that's not what they wanted to hear. They wanted a friend. Be a friend. It doesn't cost much, but the value is incredible. Hey, you will, if you become a saint, you will experience your fair share of trials and probably more. But each one of those times happens, you can come out the other side saying, the Lord, He is good. He's always good. How do you develop a sturdy or a saintly soul? How do you develop a sturdy or a saintly soul? Well, the first thing you got to do is you have to do daily choices of faithfulness. Daily choices of faithfulness. You'll see this on your very first point, right there under the quote. How to develop a saintly soul. Daily choices of faithfulness. See, sturdy and saintly souls don't make large jumps. They just do the same thing every single day. And they just keep doing it over and over and over again. It's what makes them sturdy. The Bible tells us this in 1 Corinthians 4:2. Who would like to read this verse? 1 Corinthians 4:2. Dave?
Moreover, it is required in stewards that a man be found faithful.
You want to be a good steward of the cross? Be faithful to the cross. Be faithful to what you already know. You see, there is nothing today that I'm going to teach you that if you've been coming to church for more than 15 years that you probably haven't already heard. But it's remembering those faithful choices over and over and over again. It's doing those faithful choices over and over again. Daily choices of humility. Daily choices of humility. The Bible tells us we must be humble. In fact, the Bible tells that in Proverbs 22:4. Josh, do you want to read this one?
By humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life.
See, everyone believes, oh no, hey, you want to have a sturdy soul? You just got to do something great once. And there's daily choices of humility. By humility and fear of the Lord are riches, honor, and life. Riches, honor, and life don't come by anything else, by the humility and the fear of the Lord. Being able to look it up at the Lord and go, Lord, you are wiser than I. Even if I don't understand it, you're good. You're good. Lord, I trust you. That's not easy. But that's understanding the correct placement of between me and God. And that's what makes a Christian sturdy. This is where I'm at. God is saying, I will be like a tree planted by the rivers of water. I shall not be moved. I am like a green olive tree in the house of my God, that bringeth forth its fruit in its season. I am sturdy. I'm standing strong. The sturdy soul loves discipline. Out of the fires of discipline and suffering, most of these souls are forged. It's just true. Sturdy souls love discipline. Well, I don't like discipline. Usually you're not sturdy. That's how it works. Disciplined souls often equal sturdy souls. Because see, out of the fire of consistent discipline, over and over again, where that hammer strikes the anvil, over and over again, these souls are built. It's out of the discipline and then the suffering. See, we want the Christian life to not have suffering. But all those that love God will endure suffering. The Bible tells us this. Amen. Jesus Christ endured suffering. You will have trials and tribulations. It will happen. It is your response to those trials and tribulations that make your soul forged into what it needs to be. I love reading and I love history, and I love some ancient guys who just had some great souls. One of them I love is Theodore Roosevelt. President Theodore Roosevelt, I find the man very interesting. When I was 16 years old, I read his book, T.R., the biography on Theodore Roosevelt. Absolutely fascinating man. And Theodore Roosevelt was once said it this way: nothing in this world is worth having or worth doing unless it means effort, pain, and difficulty. What does Theodore Roosevelt know about that? Well, he was born a sickly child with extreme asthma whose parents were told by a doctor he wouldn't live. So his dad took him and said, well, I'm going to make this boy live, and turned him into a man. He was too sick to go to school, so they brought in private tutors for him. His dad, because his dad was rather wealthy businessman, built a gymnasium, an actual gymnasium, Olympic gymnasium, onto his house, and hired world-class gymnasium teachers to teach his son gymnastics. A boy with asthma. His dad got some bad advice, though. He's told to have his son smoke cigars. So at the age of 2 years old, I'm not kidding, his dad would take him every night and have his son smoke a cigar to help his lungs grow better. That did not work. That did not work. But this boy was all these different things. Had poor eyesight, was told he'd never amount to anything. Yet through all those things and through the fire of adversity, just kept moving forward. When he became a young man, he married his one true love, who died shortly after. Out of his grief, he went out and tried to become a rancher. Built his own ranch farm from nothing. Soon after that, there came the call to war, created the Rough Riders, group of volunteer soldiers to go fight in the Spanish-American War in Cuba. When they arrived in Cuba, how many of you have ever seen that picture of the Rough Riders, them riding up the mountain, right? So great, except the ship bringing the horses got lost. I don't know how you get lost from Florida to Cuba. Not that far, but they did. So Teddy Roosevelt, being the colonel, Colonel Teddy, turned to the men and said, who needs horses? We'll just charge up the mountain. And literally led the men up the mountain. The guy's amazing. Became vice president because everyone wanted to get rid of him. He was the governor of New York. Super popular, super great at his job, and the people wanted to get rid of him because he was too vocal about promoting things of America first and what he wanted to do for America. So they actually nominated him, forced him to be vice president, because the vice president was a no-power job that was a dead-end job that would get him out of politics. What they didn't know is the president was going to be shot, making him president of the United States of America. As president of the United States of America, the man did some great things, like the Panama Canal, changing the American infrastructure, rebuilding the American Navy and Army so we were ready for World War I. At the end of his life, he was boxing in his late 60s and got punched in the eye and went blind in one eye. Didn't tell his wife. Remarried. It wasn't until one of his daughters noticed him shooting a rifle and closing one of his eyes. So why are you closing my eyes? Well, I'm blinded in the other one. The guy punched me. It detracted my cornea from my eye. I can't see out of it anymore, so I got to shoot one eye now. Won the presidency. Won again. Retired from presidency. Went off on an African safari to go bring animals back to America so Americans could see what animals in Africa were like. Got charged by a raging wild elephant. Shot the elephant, it didn't die, it charged him, stood there, wouldn't move, so it came closer, shot him again, the elephant ran up and fell and died right in front of him. There's a great picture of it, you should find it in the Natural Archives Museum, of the elephant literally sliding before him and falling before him, and he taps the elephant and goes, oh, bully. I love the guy. Sturdy soul. Hey, when America then started not going the way that it was supposed to go, he decided to run for president again. as an old retired man. Gets everything ready, runs for president again. While he's out to go give a speech, there's a man there who didn't like that he was giving a speech, walks up to him. The man walks up to Teddy Roosevelt, pulls a gun out, shoots him right in front of the speech. Right in the chest. Teddy Roosevelt, thankfully though, had his speech in his coat pocket. It stopped, it slowed the bullet. So it just went into his chest, that's all. They said, well, we need to take you to the hospital. He said, no, there's thousands of people waiting for my speech. Walks into the room, gives the speech. At the end of his speech, someone says, does everyone know that Teddy Roosevelt was just shot? And people wouldn't believe it. Teddy Roosevelt opened up his suit coat, and there's blood all over his suit coat and his shirt. He's in his 70s. Sounds like Dick Wagner, doesn't he? He's a sturdy soul. But he understood something. Nothing in this world is worth having or doing unless it means effort, pain, and difficulty. How much effort are you going to put into what's worth doing? How much pain are you willing to suffer? Well, my marriage doesn't work the way it should, and it's so frustrating. Yeah, it's going to require effort. It requires some pain, some difficulty. Well, church, man, it's hard to go to church these days. Effort, pain, difficulty. Well, let's look at some case studies, some biblical case studies of the sturdy soul. You've all heard of these case studies. Joseph, the sturdy saint. Hey, Joseph starts off as a young man. He is the 11th son and the firstborn of Rachel. From a youth, he's known as an honest young man. But his brethren are not. His brethren sell him into slavery. And each time Joseph just stands firm and will not do what's wrong. Sold into slavery, he stands for God. As a slave, he stands for God. When he's accused of wrongdoing, he's offered an opportunity to do wrong, he stands for God. When he's accused of wrongdoing, he stands for God. When he's in prison, he stands for God. When he's betrayed in prison, he stands for God. When he has an opportunity to get out of prison, if he just takes the credit, he says, it's not me, it's God. It's God. When his brothers come back and he has full right to kill them. This is what he says. Who would like to read these verses? Genesis 50, 18 through 21. This is a bad time to be waving papers, Carol. Marty.
And his brethren also went and fell down before his face, and they said, Behold, we be thy servants. And Joseph said unto them, Fear not, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good to bring it to pass, as it is this day, to save much people alive. Now therefore, fear ye not. I will nourish you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spake kindly unto them.
How would you respond? How would you respond to people who did wrong? You see, we call Joseph the most perfect type of Christ in the Old Testament. That's because even though he was beaten, battered, and bruised, and it took effort, difficulty, and pain, he still took care of the people who hurt him. Because that's what sturdy saints do. Oh, well, Patrick, that's just one character in the Bible. What about Caleb? Caleb, who wholly followed the Lord his God. Remember that? Caleb? He's the leader in the nation of Israel. He's one of only two men who stands with Joshua to say we go into the land, we go fight, and everyone turns against him. In fact, when Joshua and him are standing there, it's not Joshua who gives the speech to try to turn the people back to God. It's not even Moses. It's Caleb. Caleb says, listen, we can do this. Listen, with God as our strength, we can do it. He's the one who saw the giants. For 40 years, he has to suffer with everyone else because of everyone else's sin. We live in a world today where we don't like to suffer because someone else does wrong. But see, we have total types in the Bible over and over again who suffer because of other people's sin. At the very end, each time they stand before it and say, the Lord, he is good. What about Caleb? Let's read this back. Who'd like to read these verses? 6 through 12, 6 verses. This is that moment where I let someone read the verses. Josh, go ahead, sir.
Then the children of Judah came unto Joshua, and Gilgal, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the
Kenzanite.
Kenzanite, said unto him, Thou knowest the thing that the Lord said unto Moses, the man of God, concerning me and thee in Kadesh Barnea.
Mm-hmm.
40 years old was I when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to espy out the land, and I brought him word again as it was in my heart. You going?
Keep going, sir.
Nevertheless, my brethren that went up with me made the heart of the people melt, but I wholly followed the Lord my God. And Moses sware on that day, saying, Surely the land whereon thy feet have trodden shall be thine inheritance, and thy children forever, because thou hast wholly followed the Lord my God.
I'll read the next verse. Now behold, the Lord hath kept me alive, as he said, these 45 years. He's now 85 years old. Even since the Lord spake this word unto Moses, and the children of Israel wandered in the wilderness, and lo, I am this day 85 years old. As yet I am strong this day, as I was in the day that Moses sent me, and as my strength was then, even so is now my strength now, for war both to go out and to come in. Now therefore give unto me this mountain where the Lord spake in that day. For thou heardest in that day how the Amalekites were there, and the cities were great and fenced. If so be the Lord will be with me, then I shall be able to drive them out, as the Lord said. You know, something never occurred to me. Caleb was the one who saw the giants. I always heard the story, Caleb and Joshua were the ones bringing the grapes out. Probably that would make sense. But see, the promise from Moses is that the land where Caleb walked will be the land that Caleb would get. Which means the guy who saw the giants was the only guy who wanted to take the giants on.
Yes.
And Caleb at 45 walks in and says, I want the mountain full of giants. And me and my boys, we're going to go in and we're going to defeat them all. And Moses promised me that 40 years ago they could be mine. And I've waited 45 years for them. And no one else wants it because it's hard. But I want it. And the Bible says that Caleb goes in and he defeats the whole mountain and takes the whole mountain back and claims the whole mountain for the nation of Israel. And there was a valley over on the other side. And in the valley there was some other giants who the other people wouldn't take. And so Caleb looks over and says, listen, any man who will go out there and will take that valley, they can marry my daughter and get all my inheritance, because apparently my sons wouldn't do it. And Othniel, the first judge of the nation of Israel, walks up and says, I'll take the valley. And he did. And he took the valley. And the first time after the nation of Israel falters, Othniel, the now son-in-law of Caleb, raises up, because see, Caleb wasn't really willing to let his sturdy soul die with him. He passed it on. Caleb was not content to let his sturdy soul pass with him, but instead he passed it on to others. Hey, take your sturdy soul and give it to someone else. Let someone else have it. What about Paul, the apostle of Christ? Paul, the apostle of Christ, he says it here in 2 Timothy 4, verse 7 and 8. I have fought the good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. Henceforth is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, with the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day. Not to me only, but to all them that love is appearing. The man who was beaten, the man who was stoned, the man who was shipwrecked, left for dead, still said, hey, I love Jesus Christ. And in his final letter written to his son in the faith, who he knows he's soon to go be beheaded, he writes, says, I'm done it. Man, am I glad I did. Hey, I have one dream for you, Timothy. Maybe you'll get to do the same thing I did. Hey, have you ever thought about the weirdness of that statement? Hey, Timothy, I hope that you get shipwrecked, bit by snakes, stoned, beaten. I hope you get all that stuff. I'm hoping that happens to you, bud. Can I tell you why? Because he knew the joy of it. There was a joy on the other side. Because see, with each one of those trials also came him meeting Timothy. See, Timothy was there most likely. He's from the city that Paul gets first stoned at. Most biblical historians believe that Timothy probably would have been in that early church that walked out there, stood around the rocks of a heaped, broken body of a man who stands up from the rocks and goes, "Hey, I'm hungry. Let's go inside the city and eat now." Well, says Paul goes in the city and eats. How, by the way, if you're a 16-year-old young man and you see your pastor get stoned to death, and then he gets up out of the stones, pushes them off, walks in and says, "Hey, the Lord, He is good. Hey, can we get some food?" I think that'd make an impression on you. Then he comes back and says, "Hey, I need someone to come help me." And you go, "Yeah, I'll go with you." Hey, be the sturdy soul. Survive each one of them. If one wishes to be a sturdy soul like Paul, one must fight a few battles. I'll say it again. If one wishes to be a sturdy soul like Paul, one must fight a few battles. Hey, do you understand? There's a lot of battles you're going to have to fight. There's going to be some times your family and friends won't understand you. Well, this is hard. You understand, like, all the family, they always do spiked eggnog every year at Christmas. It's what we do. And you're going to say, "Yeah, but I don't drink anymore. It's not good for me." It's Thanksgiving. We always gossip about Aunt May. We don't gossip in this house. We don't do it. It's not allowed. I'm sorry. That's not happening here. Come on, it's just harmless chatter. Really? Then how about I go harmlessly chatter about you? How would you feel about it? Hey, sometimes you're going to have to fight a few. You're going to have to make some stands that are not going to make you popular. That's what a sturdy soul does. It's amazing how few people want to fight the battles that are required. Every soul was created by God, needs to be filled by its Creator, spiritually and mentally. The purpose of this book has been to help those who are searching for a way to fill their soul, or those wanting to help others feed their starving soul. Well, this book is by no means exhaustive. It does hope to give the reader a basic understanding of the needs and conditions and solutions of the soul. It's very simple. If you want to have a sturdy soul, you're going to have to make some choices. Edgar Allan Guest once wrote a poem. I love it. It's one of my favorites. It's called "The Proof of Your Worth." Through victory is proof of the skill you possess. Defeat is proof of your grit. A weakling can smile in his days of success, but at trouble's first sign, he will always quit. So the test of the heart and the test of your pluck isn't the skies that are sunny or fair, but how do you stand to the blow that is struck, and how do you battle despair? A fool can seem wise when the pathway is clear and it's easy to see the way out. But a test of a man's judgment is something to fear. And what does he do when in doubt? And the proof of his faith is the courage he shows when the sorrows lie deep in his breast, is the way that he suffers, of the grief that he knows, that brings out his worst or his best. The test of a man is how much he will bear for a cause which he knows to be right. How long will he stand in the depths of despair? How much will he suffer and fight? There are many to serve when the victory is near, and there are few hurts to be borne. But it calls for a leader with courage to cheer the men in a battle forlong. It is the way you hold out against odds that are great that proves what your courage is worth. It is the way that you stand to the bruises of fate that shows up your stature and girth. And victory is nothing but proof of your skill, veneered with a glory that's thin. unless as proof of unfaltering will, unless you have suffered to win. Theodore Roosevelt said it this way: unless a man is master of his soul, all other kinds of mastery will amount to little. It's time to master our souls. It's time to take our souls and say, you will no longer be the stallion that drives me. You'll be the horse I ride to victory. Let's choose to make a difference today. Let's look at some of the questions here at the end, and then we'll close out in our lesson today. Question number 1, list the steps to develop a sturdy soul. What are the steps to develop a sturdy soul today, folks? Laura. That is correct. What do all 3 of our case studies of sturdy and saintly souls all have in common? What do all 3 of them have in common?
Faith in God.
Faith in God, that's one thing they have in common. What else do they have in common?
Discipline.
Discipline, agreed.
And so they stayed faithful.
They stayed faithful. Very good. Anything else you can think of? There's a lot of similarities. Adversity. Great pain.
Made difficult.
Great adversity that led to great pain. And yet each time they always come out at the end of it saying, the Lord's good. What are some other characters in the Bible who also displayed a saintly soul? This isn't listed here. What are some characters you can think of that displayed a saintly or sturdy soul in the Bible that you can learn from? Now, we all understand that they're all mirroring the life of Jesus. That's where they get their saintly, sturdy soul. But what are some characters in the Bible you go, yeah, that guy had that? Or that? Daniel. Very good. Who?
Job.
Job, yes. David. Stephen, yes. Yes, sir. No, what about some ladies in the Bible? What about some ladies in the Bible? Helen, Ruth. Esther, yes.
Rahab,
yes. How about Mary?
Mary, yeah.
How about Mary Magdalene? Oh, Martha?
Yeah.
There's so many. Listen, all over again. And by the way, each one of those people, they were you and me. They were. They're just flesh and blood. It was the soul within them that was different. They fired it. And they held it firm. Every one of them had mistakes and sin. We know they did. But they chose to be better. Thank you for listening to this series. Let us now close in a word of prayer. Dear Lord and Heavenly Father, thanks to you against, Lord. Thank you, Lord, that you are truly always only good. Thank you, Lord, that you help us to be a sturdy, saintly soul. Let me say, Pastor, as I listen to this lesson tonight, God spoke to my heart. There's some things that I need to, some things I need to fix. There's some goals I need to do, some daily choices that I need to make. If that's true, would you raise your hand so I can pray along with you? Pastor Joe, there's some things that I need to make that I can do. I see those hands all around the room. Pastor Joe, there's some character traits I need to add to my life. I would love it to be said that at the end of my life, I was a saintly, sturdy soul. If that's right, would you raise your hand so I can pray with you? Once again, thank you. Maybe it wasn't this lesson. Maybe it was one of the previous lessons we've done in the past. You say something in that lesson struck my heart. I remembered it now. I'm going to make that decision. I'm going to keep it. Maybe you started it and then things got busy. And you're saying that won't keep me being a sturdy soul. Well, let's seal those right now. Marty's going to play one verse of a song. I'll let her pick any song she wants to play. While she plays that song, if God spoke to your heart, kneel at your seat or come forward to the altar of grace and pray that God will help you make these decisions faithful. thank you for joining with us. If you're in the choir and you need to use the restroom, get a drink or anything like that, you are dismissed right now first. Go ahead and go do that. If you don't need to use anything, go ahead and make your way up to the choir loft right now. This way we can have you go up and start practicing for our Christmas musical. Everyone else, thank you for coming today. You are dismissed. See you on Wednesday night and see you next Sunday night at 5 p.m.